Hi, I'm Don Dodge, and this is Google Root Access. Today, my guest is Ryan Damico, founder and CEO of Crocodoc. Welcome, Ryan.
Thanks, Don.
So I met you about 6 years ago in Boston, and at the time you were doing this like web annotation thing that you called Crocodoc. So tell me about how you started, first of all.
Sure. So I started the company out of my dorm room at MIT. And back then we called ourselves Web Notes because we were building note-taking software for students. And it was a classic case of the startup that solves a problem because they think it's really cool, and obviously the world's going to come and buy it once it's out. So we spent a good 2 to 2.5 years building this really good product for creating highlights and sticky notes and other types of annotations in your web browser. And we were so convinced that everyone was going to love it. But we made the classic mistake of solving a non-problem. We had a really well-executed product that nobody cared about. So that was the very first iteration of the company.
Was it that they didn't care about it, or that they wouldn't pay for it?
It's a good question. Well, we were selling to students, and that's a hard thing to do regardless. But the more important issue is that we weren't solving a really burning hair-on-fire problem. We were building a set of features that were really perceived as nice-to-haves.
So it was a vitamin, not a painkiller.
Exactly, yeah, and we learned that the hard way.
Interesting. And how did you pivot from that to, or did you do several pivots from there to where you are today?
Well, there was a main pivot when we had spent a couple years building this product, and we saw that it was getting some use, but the growth was really flat, and we had added a couple features, tested some hypotheses, and nothing was really moving the needle too much. So right around that time, we were running out of money as a startup. We almost imploded as a company. We made a whole bunch of mistakes as a startup. And then just as we pulled up before hitting the ground, we moved from Boston out to Mountain View and went through Y Combinator. And that's when we started trying bigger experiments with the product. And the one that led to Crocodoc was taking this one feature from our product called Web Notes, where you could upload a PDF file to your web browser, view it in a Flash player we built, and then actually highlight it and add annotations to it. That was the thing people seemed to like the most. So we ripped that out of Web Notes in a weekend. We rebranded it as Crocodoc. And we repositioned it not as an academic tool, but as a way to collaborate with coworkers and actually annotate presentations and documents to get work done. And that's where we started to see some real traction and some interest in the product.
So tell me about Y Combinator, or let me ask this question. Do you think you would have gotten to the same point and done the same pivot on your own back in Boston, or did it take being in the Y Combinator community and in that cauldron of ideas to get you there?
I think it certainly helped. Y Combinator was a catalyst for sure. And being surrounded by a whole bunch of other startups that were facing similar issues, that really helped to zoom out and get some perspective in what we were doing. And just moving the company across the company, we needed a big change like that, metaphorically. So we did that. It kind of caused us to reassess what we were doing. If we hadn't, maybe we would have come up with this change, but it would have taken a longer time at least.
So I did a show a few weeks ago about accelerators and incubators and why you might consider joining an incubator and what you give up in equity and that kinds of things. What was your experience at Y Combinator, and in retrospect, do you think it was a great decision to do?
Yeah, in retrospect, it was definitely a great decision. I don't think we would have made it as a company had we not gone through Y Combinator. Just because when we started off, we were very naive entrepreneurs. We were just kind of heads down building things we thought were cool, which is really not the best way to build a product. So the best thing, again, was just being surrounded by those other companies who some had faced similar problems, some were more advanced and farther along than we were. But just getting to see that perspective and see that we weren't alone in going through those struggles and learning from others in terms of how they dealt with those problems, that was by far the most beneficial aspect of it.
So it was beneficial, and the equity that you gave up didn't matter in the scheme of things?
It didn't. At first, we were really hesitant. Oh man, we don't want to give up these points of equity. But looking back, I mean, it should have been such a no-brainer for us. Because we were debating whether to give up a few points of equity for a company that was just headed straight in a nosedive for the ground. So it was really worth it for us, and it was a fun experience too.
Awesome. So you did some pivots from being a consumer-facing kind of freemium app to an enterprise app. So that's where you are today. How did you get there?
Sure. Well, there's one more key pivot that nobody expected, which is that once we had this Crocodoc product where we were letting people collaborate on PDFs and other documents online, we kind of made the decision that in order for us to be successful, we had to build the best online viewer for documents in the world. Because unlike images and videos, documents don't really work natively on the web. So we saw that as an opportunity, and we spent another several years actually ditching everything we built in Flash and recreating everything in HTML5. We wanted a faster, lighter weight experience, wanted to get onto mobile devices. So we made a big technology decision and kind of made a big bet on that. And it really paid off. And the surprising thing is that once we actually figured out we could actually display Office and PowerPoint and PDF documents in pure HTML in your web browser and your mobile device, we were going to use that in our own product. But before we could recycle the technology back into the company, we started getting approached by other companies who saw what we built, and they said, hey, I like what you're doing, don't really care for this businessy product, but can we embed the technology in our own products? And that was the major pivot that led us to the success that we saw and eventually became very profitable doing as a company. So we actually licensed this out, hosted a web-based SaaS API, and partnered with companies like Yammer, LinkedIn, Facebook, Dropbox, SAP, all these companies who use this in their own services so that their users could see documents in their own web apps. And
so you generated revenue early from that kind of relationship? We
did. Totally unexpected, but it turns out especially when you're selling to enterprises, you've got to have the best product, 10 times better than anything else. And as a startup, what we learned, again, the hard way, is that you've got to find a problem, A, you can solve better than anyone else, but B, that's narrow enough in scope that you can solve it. I mean, we were just a 7-person company, and we were able to carve out this niche for us where we build the best online document viewer, which is a very specific kind of technology. But sure enough, we did it so well that other companies couldn't not take notice, and it really helped us with our sales.
So how do you convince a big company to buy a product from a tiny startup?
It's not easy. It's not easy. You've got to win on product for starters. So if you don't have the best product, I don't think you've got a chance. If you've got the best product, then you have a chance. And for us, it helped by really identifying who was going to evangelize us at the target company. So we worked with folks, for instance, at Yammer, who really believed in what we were doing, saw the value for the users, and worked with us. And as a startup, what we did is just really partnered with that person and asked a lot of questions about how we're perceived, functionally, what do we have to do? Pricing is always difficult when you're starting off. How is pricing perceived? And really built up a great rapport. So we were just asking questions, getting direct feedback, and adapting the technology and the business that we're offering to suit the needs of the customer.
And how did you target your customers? How did you find them?
It's a good question. We were really lucky in that most of our customers all came to us. It's a really small world out there. When we did our first integration with Yammer, and that went live, went really well. It allowed users of Yammer to upload all sorts of documents and actually view them, and then collaboratively add highlights and comments in Yammer's product. And for Yammer, this brought users out of their inbox and actually created a whole new workflow on Yammer, which was really successful. A lot of other companies took notice of this, and then soon enough we were working on resumes for LinkedIn, internal presentations for SAP, and all sorts of interesting applications like that. So we just were approached by a lot of companies.
Wow, great story. Well, that's all we have time for today. Thank you for joining us. As a Google Root Access viewer, we're offering a $2,000 credit on Google Cloud. So if you'd like to develop applications in the cloud, get a $2,000 credit to get started. The details are on your screen. Thank you very much for joining us, and see you next time.